Now you have come to know all about the force and its types. Next, I am going to explain friction. Friction is also a type of force. It is a type of contact force. When the two objects are in direct contact with each other, then there is friction. It is always opposite to the motion. That means when the object is in motion, it is in moving condition, then only the frictional force applies there, and it is opposite to the motion. That means against to the motion. When we rub our hand against each other, then there is frictional force between our palms, and this also release some heat. After friction, the heat is released so that the hand gets warm. In previous video, I explained all the examples of frictional force. For example, walking, writing, running, stopping of vehicle, and many more from our daily life. When we walk, there is a frictional force between the feet and the floor. When we are writing, then there is frictional force between the chalk and the blackboard, or between the pen and the paper. Same as other. So this is about the frictional force. What are the causes of friction? Why the friction is caused? It is due to the irregularities present on the surface. When the surface is rough, then there is more irregularities, and when the surface is smooth, then there is less irregularities. But every object must have some irregularities so that the object moves over another. Even if the surface is smooth, then also the some amount of irregularities are there. So we can say that the cause of friction is roughness. If the object or the surface is more rough, then there will be more friction. If it is less rough or if it is smooth, then there is less friction. And so the chances of getting slip in on the smooth surface is more. We are able to walk on rough surface very easily, but if the floor is made up of tile or granite, then it becomes difficult to walk on it, and chances of getting slip it increases there, because there is less friction as the surface is very smooth. One activity is given here to demonstrate that friction depends on the nature of surface in contact. Materials required is wooden block, a spring balance, a tabletop, a piece of rough board, and a luster tile. Attach one side of the wooden block to the hook of the spring balance. Spring balance is a device which measures the friction. So the spring balance is attached to the wooden block by a hook, and it is placed on the wooden tabletop. Now try to pull it with the help of this spring balance, and then observe the reading of the spring balance. This gives the magnitude of the force of friction between the block and the tabletop. Then same procedure will be repeated with the luster tile. We will take luster tile, keep it on the wooden tabletop, and hook by the help of hook we try to pull the luster tile. What we will observe? We will find that the force of friction was less on the luster tile while force of friction was more on the rough wooden board. Hence, the conclusion is that the friction depends on the nature of two surfaces in contact. If the surface is rough, then there is more friction, and if the surface is smooth, then there is less friction. That means the luster tile will move freely, but the wooden block will move slowly as it is rough. Three types of friction are there: static friction, sliding friction, and rolling friction. Depending on the state of motion of an object, it is categorized into three types. First, static friction. When the object is in rest condition, then the force between the object and the surface is static friction. When we try to move it, then the irregularities between the surface in contact are interlocked because it is in rest condition. So the surface are in interlocked with each other, and so we need a greater force to break this interlocking. And the force required to overcome this friction is known as static friction. It is generally very high because to start anything we need a more force because of this interlocking of the irregularities. Second is sliding friction. When the object comes in motion, that means it is in sliding condition, then the force acting between the two surfaces is known as sliding friction or kinetic friction. When the object is sliding, then there is not enough time for the interlocking between the two surfaces in contact. So this, due to the lesser interlocking, the most and the friction force applied is less there, and hence the always the sliding friction is less than the static friction. And third is rolling friction. Due to the wheel, where the object which is in rolling condition, it needs less friction to move from one place to another. See the wheel, when we push on this hill, the wheel rolls forward, and this friction resists its sliding, and it is because of the simple fact that rolling friction is much less as compared to static and sliding friction. So nowadays in many of the items in our um, daily life, many of the items which we use in our daily life, that is and the washing machine or the trolley bag, have rollers, the wheels at their base, and so it becomes easy to move them from one place to another. Then the activity to show that rolling friction is less than sliding friction. Here material required is a suitcase without roller and a suitcase with roller. Suitcase means the trolley bag and the bag which we use to carry the clothes. Now place 2-3 heavy books in the suitcase without rollers and then slide the suitcase from one room to another. And then keep the same books in the other suitcase which is having rollers and roll it from one room to another. What you will observe that you are able to roll the suitcase which is having roller. It is easily rolled from one room to another, but the suitcase which don't have rollers, it will, or we need more force to move it. Thus, conclusion is rolling friction is much less than the sliding friction. That is why the invention of wheel was a revolutionary one, as it changed the history of transport. So these are all about the friction and its types.